The sun had barely risen over Los Angeles when the news hit the Forrester family like a thunderclap. A long-lost figure, presumed dead for years, had reappeared, bringing with them a wave of fear, regret, and terror. Quinn Fuller, the woman whose life had once been intertwined with the Forrester family in ways that none could forget, was back. Her return was no accident, and it wasn't a moment of serendipity. She wasn't here to reconcile, to apologize, or to rejoin the social scene. She was back for one thing: revenge. Quinn's mind was set on one singular goal: to expose Carter Walton, the man she had once loved, as the mastermind behind her near-death experience. She had returned with a plan so intricate, so ruthless, that it would turn the lives of everyone involved upside down. To say her presence shook the foundation of the Forrester empire would be an understatement. Quinn's return sent shockwaves through the entire city of Los Angeles, and no one was safe. For those who had wronged her, and even those who had unknowingly been drawn into the web of lies and betrayal, Quinn's plan was about to unfold, and no one would escape its destructive path. Carter Walton had long since moved on, or so he thought. The Forrester legal team had thrived under his leadership, and he had slowly begun to piece together a life that was far removed from the scandalous and dangerous affair that had once involved Quinn. He had put her behind him, or so it seemed. But the truth was far more insidious. What Carter didn't know was that Quinn had survived the alleged death orchestrated by those who had wanted her out of the picture. Carter, in a fit of betrayal, had believed that he had been complicit in her demise, unaware of the deeper conspiracy at play. As Quinn's mind spun in her solitary captivity, she had realized that Carter was merely a pawn in a much bigger game, one that she was now determined to unravel. But first, she needed to expose the truth. She needed to make Carter pay for his actions. The Forrester family was unaware of Quinn's return initially. She had spent months, even years, quietly planning her next move, building connections, and biding her time. But when she finally made her presence known, it wasn't through a gentle confrontation or a quiet visit. It was with a dramatic entrance that no one could ignore. Quinn didn't just want to make a statement. She wanted to ensure that every single person who had wronged her knew exactly what was coming. She had always been a woman of action, a force to be reckoned with, and this time, her actions would be far from subtle. The moment she stepped back into the Forrester mansion, Quinn's eyes burned with rage, and her every movement spoke of a vengeance that had been years in the making. She wasted no time in seeking out those responsible for her pain, beginning with Carter. Carter's reaction to her return was one of pure disbelief. He had convinced himself that the past was behind him, that his life with his new love and career was secure. But Quinn wasn't just back to stir the pot. She was there to unearth the darkest secrets of his past and expose him for the man he truly was. She was going to destroy him, piece by piece, until there was nothing left but a shell of the man who had once been so sure of his innocence. Quinn didn't work alone. Her plan involved others who had their own grudges and scores to settle with the Forrester family. Quinn knew that to pull off the revenge of a lifetime, she would need to align herself with those who had as much to gain from tearing the Forrester empire apart as she did. Her first move was to quietly form alliances, pulling in those who could help execute her plans. She was no longer the woman who had once been swept up in the Forrester world of glamour and riches. Quinn was now a woman who had learned to play the game on her own terms, and she wasn't afraid to get her hands dirty. As Quinn set her sights on Carter, she made it clear to him that she knew everything, every detail, every secret, every part of the plan that had been set in motion years ago. She had been watching, waiting, and gathering evidence, and now she was ready to unleash it all. Carter, who had always been one to keep his emotions in check, was forced to confront his past mistakes, but this time, the stakes were higher. Quinn wasn't interested in simple revenge. She was after his career, his reputation, and his very soul. She wanted him to feel the weight of his betrayal, and she would stop at nothing to see it done. But Quinn's plan wasn't just about Carter. It was about everyone who had been involved in the events that led to her supposed death. She had a list, and on that list were the names of those who had wronged her. Each person had a part to play in her ultimate revenge, and Quinn made sure that no one would go unscathed. She knew how to manipulate, how to work people against each other, and how to make them turn on one another without them even realizing it. Her game was far from over. As Quinn continued to make her presence felt, the Forrester family began to unravel. Ridge Forrester, already reeling from his own personal and professional turmoil, found himself at odds with Quinn's return. He had his own issues to deal with, but now, with Quinn in the mix, everything seemed to spiral out of control. He had once loved her, but that love had turned to hatred as their lives had collided in the past. Ridge now found himself trapped in a complicated web, unsure of how to deal with the woman who had caused him so much grief. Brooke Logan, Ridge's longtime partner, was no less shaken by Quinn's return. Brooke had her own battles to fight, both within her family and with Ridge, and now she found herself facing the ghosts of her past. Quinn had always been a thorn in her side, and now, with her plans of revenge in motion, Brooke knew that nothing would ever be the same. The Forrester empire, which had once seemed so secure, now hung in the balance. But perhaps the most shocking of all was the impact Quinn's return had on the Forrester children, especially Steffi and Thomas. Steffi, who had fought so hard to secure her position within the company and her family, suddenly found herself forced to choose between loyalty to her father and dealing with the chaos Quinn had brought back. Thomas, whose own schemes and plans had often been the center of family drama, found himself caught in the middle of the war Quinn had ignited. He wasn't sure where he stood in the fight, but one thing was certain: his world was about to be flipped upside down, and it was only a matter of time before he had to choose a side. As the battle for control over the Forrester legacy raged on, Quinn's scheme grew more and more elaborate. Every move she made was calculated to destroy those who had wronged her, and she had no intention of stopping until she had ruined everything. With Carter's reputation in tatters, the Forrester family divided, and the company on the brink of collapse, it was clear that Quinn had succeeded in turning the tables. Her plan was coming together, piece by piece, and the question on everyone's mind was simple: who would survive, and who would be consumed by the darkness of Quinn's revenge? The family, once united under the Forrester name, was now fractured and vulnerable. As Quinn worked her way through the ranks of those who had wronged her, the devastating fallout from her revenge was felt by all. No one, not even those closest to her, could have predicted how far Quinn was willing to go. Her quest for vengeance was not just a personal matter, it was a war, one that would change everything for the Forrester family and those who had been pulled into her web of destruction. The final question remained: would anyone survive Quinn's ruthless crusade, or would the Forrester empire crumble under the weight of its own secrets and betrayals? After the sudden and heartbreaking death of Eric Forrester, the patriarch of the Forrester family, Forrester Creations was thrust into a period of uncertainty. The fashion empire that had been carefully crafted over decades, an empire that symbolized not just success, but the heart and soul of the Forrester name, was now without its guiding hand. With Eric gone, the question of who would take the reins of the family business became the most pressing issue. And at the heart of this struggle were two men: Ridge Forrester, Eric's eldest son, and Thomas Forrester, Eric's troubled but talented heir. Both had spent years in the shadow of their father, each believing they were the rightful leader of Forrester Creations, but with Eric's passing, the gloves were off, and the battle for control was about to tear the family apart. Thomas Forrester, ever the confident and ambitious son, had long seen himself as the one destined to inherit his father's legacy. He had worked alongside Eric for years, slowly carving out his place within the company. Though his actions in the past had often raised questions about his loyalty and decision-making, Thomas had always believed that his creativity and vision were the true driving forces behind Forrester Creations' success. He had long been convinced that he was the rightful heir to the company, that his skills and innovations were what would carry the Forrester name into the future. With Eric's death, Thomas saw an opportunity to claim his birthright, to step into the role he had always believed was his. But there was one problem: Ridge. Ridge Forrester, though not always the easiest of men to deal with, had spent his entire life working to make Forrester Creations the powerhouse it had become. He was Eric's firstborn, and many believed that his legacy would be carried on through him. Ridge had inherited his father's passion for fashion, his business acumen, and his leadership skills. He had always been a steady presence within the company, and while Thomas often clashed with him, Ridge's authority within the family business had never been in question until now. Ridge was determined that the company should remain under his control. He had spent years helping to build it into the prestigious institution it was, and he wasn't about to let his brother take that away from him, especially when he believed Thomas wasn't ready for the responsibility. Ridge knew that the family business wasn't just about creativity, it was about stability, about maintaining the Forrester name and legacy. He believed that Forrester Creations needed someone who could guide it with the same careful stewardship that Eric had provided, and in his eyes, that person was him. Ridge was resolute, unwilling to let go of what he had worked so hard for. The tension between Ridge and Thomas had always been palpable, but with Eric's death, it exploded into an all-out war for control. Both men had valid claims to the company, but neither was willing to back down. For Thomas, this was the culmination of years of feeling overlooked and undervalued. He believed that his time had come, that his vision was what Forrester Creations needed to survive in an increasingly competitive fashion world. He was eager to prove that he was more than just the son of Eric Forrester. He was a force in his own right. But for Ridge, it was more than just a matter of business. This was about preserving the family legacy, protecting everything that Eric had built, and keeping it within the family. Ridge wasn't about to let his brother, with all his ambition and uncertainty, tear apart what their father had worked for. As the battle for control of Forrester Creations escalated, the effects rippled through the Forrester family. Ridge's fight to maintain his position as the head of the company put him at odds with Thomas, but it also strained his relationship with other members of the family. Brooke, Ridge's wife, found herself caught in the middle of the conflict, torn between her loyalty to her husband and her growing concern about Thomas's role in the company. She had always supported Ridge, but as the conflict between him and Thomas deepened, Brooke was forced to reconsider her position. She knew that Ridge's determination to protect the family legacy was commendable, but she also understood Thomas's desire to prove himself and take the reins. The situation was further complicated by the fact that both men were her family, her husband and her stepson, and it was becoming increasingly difficult for Brooke to navigate the chasm that had formed between them. Meanwhile, Steffi, Ridge's daughter and a key player within Forrester Creations, found herself torn between the two men she loved, her father and her brother. Steffi had always been close to Ridge, but she also had a deep respect for Thomas's talents and vision. She had been raised to believe in the strength of the Forrester name, and now, as the company's future hung in the balance, she found herself struggling to reconcile her loyalties. Could she support her father, the man who had always been there for her, or should she back her brother, whose vision for the company mirrored her own ambitions? The pressure was immense, and Steffi's role in the family business became increasingly complicated as the war for control waged on. The battle wasn't just confined to family meetings or corporate boardrooms, it spilled over into the public eye. The media was quick to catch wind of the growing rift within Forrester Creations, and the Forrester family's dirty laundry became fodder for tabloids and fashion blogs alike. Ridge and Thomas's personal struggles were now a matter of public interest, and the company's stock prices began to fluctuate as investors watched the drama unfold. The very future of Forrester Creations seemed uncertain, and it was no longer just about who would inherit the company. It was about who could restore stability, who could keep the empire from crumbling under the weight of the family's internal turmoil. As Ridge and Thomas fought tooth and nail for control of the company, each tried to recruit allies from within the Forrester fold. Ridge appealed to those who had worked alongside him for years, hoping to solidify his position with the board members and key players within the company. Thomas, on the other hand, leveraged his creativity and passion for fashion, working to win the hearts of employees and clients who believed his vision was what the company needed to move forward. Both men played their cards carefully, knowing that one misstep could cost them everything. But it wasn't just the business that was at stake, it was the very fabric of the Forrester family. The tension between Ridge and Thomas strained relationships in ways neither of them could have anticipated. What had once been a family united by shared values and a common goal was now fractured. The personal animosity between the two brothers reached a boiling point, and the bitter feud between them spilled into every corner of their lives. Old wounds were reopened, and new betrayals seemed inevitable. In the midst of this turmoil, Steffi and Brooke were forced to choose sides, and their decisions would have lasting consequences. For Steffi, aligning with one brother over the other wasn't easy, and her choice had repercussions not just for her relationship with her father and brother, but for her own future within Forrester Creations. Brooke, too, found herself struggling with her loyalty to Ridge and her own desire for peace within the family. She knew that her decision could influence the outcome of the battle, and it weighed heavily on her heart. The war for control of Forrester Creations was far from over, and with each passing day, it seemed that the rift between Ridge and Thomas grew wider. Family dinners became battlegrounds. Once simple business meetings turned into power struggles, and the company that Eric had built with such care seemed to be crumbling under the weight of its own legacy. Ridge's determination to protect what his father had built was admirable, but it was also beginning to alienate those around him. Thomas, meanwhile, was becoming more desperate, more willing to do whatever it took to claim what he believed was rightfully his. In the end, the question remained, who would come out on top? Who would claim the throne of Forrester Creations, and at what cost? The Forrester family's struggle for control over the company was not just a battle for power. It was a fight for identity, for the future of a legacy, and for the heart and soul of a family torn apart by ambition, betrayal, and unrelenting desire. Ridge and Thomas's war was only just beginning, and it would take everything they had, strength, cunning, and determination, to win. But in the end, the true cost of their battle would be measured not in who inherited Forrester Creations, but in the toll it would take on the relationships that had once bound them together. The question was no longer just about business, it was about what was left of the Forrester family when the dust finally settled.